The following podcast is an Enticing Media production.
Where the Nell have you been? Join us for conversation about life, business, and everything in between. Welcome to What the Nell, where we've got stories to tell. Here's your host, enTICE.
Hello, you guys. Welcome back to another brand new episode of the What the Nell podcast with yours truly, enTICE. You've got another solo one today, and have you ever had one of those moments, if you have a podcast, where you're in the middle of doing something else and you're like, you know what? I just got this great idea for a podcast, or something was happening and you're like, I really just want to talk about it. And that's kind of what happened today. I was in the middle of doing something and it dawned on me that I've been wanting to do an episode about this. And I was inspired recently by a podcast that I listened to by the name of The Business of Apparel. And the host, Rachel, just recently did an episode about this topic. And I was like, you know what? I'm really inspired to do this because I have chosen, along with my husband, but I've been choosing to be child-free ever since I was 8, 10, I don't know, since I can remember. And I don't talk about this ever. And not too many people do. And I think it needs to be talked about more often because there are so many misconceptions surrounding people that choose to be child-free. And I was in the moment this morning and I just thought, you know what? I gotta buckle down. I gotta do this recording and I need an episode anyway. And I thought now's the time. So I felt very inspired to do so. So thank you, Rachel, for being that inspiration. But yeah, I guess, you know, there are so many misconceptions about being child-free and choosing to be child-free and not choosing to be child-free for whether it be medical reasons or for any other reason other than you saying, I'm choosing not to have children. So I'll give you a little bit of backstory here. Ever since I was really young, I've always been very career-driven. And I don't know that I necessarily knew at the time that I wanted to be career driven in the sense of entrepreneurship, but looking back now, it really all does kind of make sense. But I was very much wanting to be a meteorologist. I did go to school for meteorology and I did not finish. I wanted to be on the Weather Channel. I wanted to have Stephanie Abrams' job and be working alongside Jim Cantori. My gosh, what an honor that would be and how amazing. But, and I had dreams, I still remember this very vividly, of working at the Weather Channel. I had this beautiful apartment condo in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, because that's where the headquarters are. And I would come home from work and walk to dinner with friends and things like that. And I still do kind of live that lifestyle a little bit, very small snippets, I'll say. But that was always just kind of my dream. And I grew up telling everybody in my life, I'm not having kids. And everybody would say the same thing to me all the time. You might change your mind, or you don't know yet, you're too young, and those types of things. And I get it. It's, 10 years old. What adult, at least back then, was listening to a 10-year-old kid make choices about their life, So I don't discredit that type of guidance or advice in thinking that I would change my mind someday. But clearly I knew and I felt that this wasn't the thing for me. And I don't know if I would call it grateful for that positioning so early on in life, because I think it saved me from a lot of heartache and heartbreak and some really negative things that I could have experienced. Because if those of you who don't know or haven't read my book or heard me talk about this at all, I grew up with scoliosis, pretty severe. And there was a time where there was a discussion on whether I would have the surgery to correct it or correct it as much as possible, or wear a back brace for the extent of my childhood, which ultimately the latter was chosen. I wore a back brace full time from the age of 6 to 14. And the only times that I would be allowed out of that brace is for it's like extracurricular activities like sports, gymnastics, anything like that. So I did play sports growing up because ultimately, as a kid, one of my, I would say, worst happenings of my childhood was having to be in that brace 24/7, and I had to sleep with it on. It wasn't very comfortable. It was basically a permanent corset that extended the entire length of my torso. Obviously it was helping to correct my I don't know if I want to call it a disability. I think in certain ways it definitely wasn't. But, I didn't really understand it, especially at 6 years old when I sat on the steps just crying and wondering why this was happening to me. But I didn't really know that, that would lead to some other issues later in life, like possibly having children, where if I were to carry a child full term, that weight of carrying the child would put extra pressure on my spine and probably cause it to come back again, possibly even worse, to the point where I would have to have surgery to correct. And keep in mind, I'm 39, I'm about to be 40. This was so many years ago when the progression of surgical procedures, especially on your back and in this realm, weren't as advanced as they are today. So there were a lot more risks involved, and the risk of paralyzation was certainly one of them. So keep that in mind too. And alongside the actual weight of bearing a child and having that be on my back and my lower spine, there was also a point in my early adult life where I did find out that my uterus was so small that it would be unlikely for me to carry a child full term. And this was confirmed by multiple doctors. It wasn't just one doctor that said, this is your scenario. You might want to reconsider if you do consider, and that type of thing. So also keep that in mind. So I think that my positioning on choosing to be child-free was actually setting me up for success in my life. And I'm really grateful for that because, like I said, there could have been a lot of paths that I would have gone down that would have led me to being really unhappy, really dissatisfied. And I'm really just very thankful for that. On this entire path, I'm not the kind of person that's just going to meet you on the street. And if I'm asked if I have kids, then I'm going to say all of these things to you. So naturally, you're going to have some judgments and thoughts and misconceptions about what choosing to be child-free means. And I think when I was listening to Rachel's podcast, one of the things that stuck out for me the most is she said, I choose to use the term child-free, not childless, because less indicates less than. And those of us that choose to be child-free are not less than anyone else that chooses to have children. So love that reasoning, and I love that term child-free is because we chose to be free of pressure, free of anything that is feeling like a requirement to contribute to society in the way of having children. So I thought that was really beautifully explained. But today I really wanted to address some of the misconceptions that people do have that I've personally experienced on this path of choosing to be child-free. So, and I still consider, even though I did have medical reasons for not having or choosing not to have children, I could have gone down obviously surrogacy and adoption and those routes. I chose not to do that. So I still very much consider myself to be child-free. One of the biggest misconceptions is, of course, that you hate kids. It's naturally assumed that if you choose to be child-free, you must dislike them in all facets of life. And that's just not the case. I will say that kids have never I wasn't a huge fan of kids growing up, that's for sure. And honestly, I realized that they are the future and we need to take care of our kids and we need to make sure that they are the best possible versions of themselves that they could be. And that requires a lot of help from us. And even though I don't have kids, I can still contribute in that way. So I actually was told one time I was walking on the street with a group of people and we were talking about how we chose not to have kids. And this woman, oddly enough, it's a lot of times women that tend to have judgment. And she turned around and she said, "Why do you hate kids so much?" I never said I hated kids. You just assumed I did because I chose not to have them. So in that moment, I didn't really know how to respond. And I think that I would respond with this. I think it's wrong to assume that you hate kids if you don't have kids. And it's really difficult for me to have to explain myself or feel like I have to explain myself because I shouldn't have to. It's a choice. It's a choice to brush your teeth every morning. It's a choice to get out of bed. It's a choice to make a change in your life when you keep saying you want to make a change and you don't. There's that moment where you make the choices that you make. And that's for me. That's what it is. It's a choice. So I don't hate kids. I want to see them succeed. I want the best for this country, for this world, for our society, in the future when I'm not here anymore. And I want to be able to leave this earth better than I found it, to create a better space for kids to thrive and do better than we're doing now. So that's how I feel about that. It is not the case that people hate kids automatically if you choose not to have them. Another misconception is that you don't value family or relationships as much as someone that chooses to have kids. I think that those that choose to have kids are seen to have more compassion in our society, and that's not necessarily the case. There are so many different reasons for people to choose not to have kids, but lack of compassion, I don't think is one of them. And I do value family. I absolutely do. I value it so much that it was hurtful to hear when a family member wasn't supporting what I was doing and the choices that I was making in my career and just cut ties, basically. That's disappointing to me because I do value family. I look at my friends as family, chosen family. And it's really hurtful to me when people would think that about me and just create that misconception. A lot of judgment there for absolutely no reason at all. And if you don't know me and you think that way about me, please don't spend your time trying to get to know me at all, because you really don't. And I don't know that you will if that's the automatic judgment that you are coming to. So valuing family, and there are plenty of people out there that have nieces and nephews and cousins, oh my, and love them to death, but choose not to have their own children. And that's okay too. So yes, I do value family. Another misconception is you should be working and available way more often than someone who has kids. And that's not the case. We all have our own lives. We all have things going on. And just because I don't have kids doesn't mean I'm not busy. So, I run for 4 years. I do that full time. I have 2 radio shows. I have a podcast. I have a YouTube channel. I have clients. I have family. I have friends. I have me. I have a husband that occupy my time. So how and what you choose to do with your time is your own choice. And that doesn't necessarily mean that my mental health or anything should be compromised because I overextend myself because I should be available more often because I don't have kids. So I think it's really strange to think that, especially I think that not having kids, I am more available. Honestly, I really am. And that's part of the reason why I don't have kids. I want to be more available. I want to have more free time. There are certain values that I do choose over having kids, and time and freedom and are 2 of them. I really do. And I know that it is totally possible to go travel with kids. I know it's possible to take your kids out to dinner or take them wherever, but that's just not for me. So the fact that I choose to take time for me and recoup and rest and recharge when I want to in business. So thank you very much. Another misconception. I have a list, and that's why I'm just kind of going through these, but they're pretty cut and dry because there's really not much explanation needed behind them because honestly, I shouldn't even really feel like I have to do this episode. But here we are. The common misconception is your opinions about the future don't matter. And when I say this, I mean in the realm of parenting, education, things like that. Because automatically, if I don't have someone in the school system or out there running around among other kids and in places where kids roam, I don't know, in society. This is so, like, the language that I'm using is so terrible to describe this, but I don't really know how else to say this. My opinions about the future of Earth, our society, everything absolutely do matter just as much as yours. And I would just like to have that space and that freedom and be honored for it, just like everyone else. So the difference between choosing to have kids and not having kids and deciding on our future and how we want things to look, to me, isn't up to whether or not we have kids. It's really up to whether or not we have the motivation to leave this earth a better place than how we found it. So this common misconception I've heard and dealt with a lot, and especially in my 20s, early 30s. The misconception is that you must be partying and drinking all the time because you're lacking responsibility in your life because you're immature. And choosing not to have kids puts you in that category. And I think that a lot of this misconception has come from certain groups of people. I don't want to name specific groups because they're small groups. I think that there are definitely certain groups, and I would name religious groups in that because a lot of people do believe that God put us here to procreate and reproduce and all of those things, but that's just not how I operate. And that's not how I choose to think and feel. No, I don't party and drink all the time. In fact, I make it a point to not drink at all during the week. Monday to Friday. Friday, I might break that. I might have a drink. And if I do, I quote, go out drinking, unquote, I would say I would probably have just not even a handful. I mean, probably 2, 3 at the most. And that's about the extent of it. Let's also keep in mind, I'm getting close to 40. I don't feel the same way the next morning that I used to when I was 23. So there's that. I do love to hang out with friends. I do love to spend time sitting out on my back deck having a glass of wine. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I would encourage everyone to unwind the way that they choose to, whether that includes alcohol or not. And you know your body, my gosh. And partying and drinking, lack of responsibility, immature. I can't tell you how many times I have given myself physical and mental challenges that keep me disciplined. Being a business owner in itself keeps me disciplined. And if you're not challenging yourself and doing those types of things for you, they're actually good things to do for you and keep you on track with your goals and where you want to be in 1, 2, 5 years from now. And so I absolutely do have a lot of responsibility, and I enjoy fasting. I enjoy doing the carnivore diet sometimes. I enjoy dry January. I enjoy having temporary discomfort to create more comfort for the future for me. I am on a mission right now to feel better than I ever have felt in my life by the time I'm 40. I don't drink nearly as often. And if I do drink, I do take steps like drinking lots of water while I'm doing it to feel better and take care of myself. I eat better and I make smarter choices as far as rest goes and how I operate on a daily basis. That requires discipline, and that's responsibility. So I don't take that lightly anyway. And that thought process of lacking responsibility in choosing to be child-free also rolls right into another misconception, which is You have no, quote, motherly instinct, meaning you don't have compassion or care about others or know how to nurture. That's also just not the case. Now, I will say I've never been known to be the most nurturing person. I do have a little bit of emotional struggle, I would say. I don't really have a way to express feelings very well. I wasn't necessarily raised in the sense that we would say all the time, like, I feel this way, or I love this, or I love it. Like, those types of things are very uncomfortable for me. And I'm working on that. I'm a work in progress. But it's untrue that I don't care for other people, or I don't care about our planet, or anything like that. Have basically no care or no soul. And I've been told I'm soulless before, but maybe that's just because I can be cutthroat and I can be ruthless and brutal in my delivery and how I communicate. And honestly, I really think that's necessary sometimes, especially in business. I'm a woman business owner in a very male-dominated industry. So forgive me for being a little brutal and straightforward sometimes. So it's having no motherly instinct. Maybe we could just stop using the term motherly instinct, because it's not just mothers that have instincts to care for people. Anyway, the other misconception, of course, is you're selfish. You must be selfish to have made a choice like that for you and your husband and everyone else in your life. And obviously grandparents or parents want you to have children so they can be grandparents. I get that. But, if I'm selfish for making the choice to be child free, how is that any different from a choice to not be child free? You're making that choice for yourself, for your future. I'm making just as much of a choice in that realm. So I think it's just honestly stupid. I think that's really old and antiquated, and we need to start changing the narrative and the perception on what selfish is. And I honestly don't even like the word. I hate using it. And I think that you absolutely do have to, especially as a mother or a father or any parental figure in anyone's life, you have to take care of yourself before you can even begin to think about caring for someone else and putting 100% of your energy into another person. I mean, it's kind of like the concept when you're on a flight during the safety briefing and they tell you that you need to put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. It's honestly true. And I'm wearing the oxygen mask, but I'm willing to share. And whether that is with a kid of my own or someone else I know, their kid or anybody, like that, what does it matter? I think that selfish is just a really old, dumb, antiquated term. So moving past that, this is going to be the last one because I really don't want to. I know I've been rambling, but I just can't stop being so passionate about this topic. You must be so refreshed and well rested with all of that sleep that you get. I love this one. I really do, especially as a business owner. So I've had so many parents over the years say to me, don't even tell me. You can't tell me what tired is like until you have a kid. Sure, everybody experiences their own version of tired. What that can mean, it's physical, mental, emotional. We all feel drained at times. And, maybe someone's feeling a little drained and tired because they've been traveling for 24 hours. Let me tell you, that's a type of tiredness all in itself. And, maybe someone else is feeling a little tired because they own a business and someone, you've got a lot of work to do and you've got to do it. You've got to roll up your sleeves and get in there and stay up all night to do it. Maybe someone else is feeling a little tired because they're dealing with an ailing family member and they're caring for them. And they're spending a lot of their time and their energy focusing on that person and making sure that they're getting well or being taken care of. And there are so many instances where we can jump to so many conclusions and make these judgments. And it's wrong. It really, truly is. I think the moral of the story to all of this is try to open your heart and your mind and consider the situation of the person that you're making the judgment about. And that doesn't happen often enough, obviously, given the political stances of some people in our country, or any other stance on any issue that comes up. I just say politics because, we're so heavily focused on that right now with it being an election year. But it's, I just consider you to think about other people occasionally and gasp, isn't that what I'm being judged for not doing by choosing to be child-free? So I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up. And like I said, this has been an episode that I've been wanting to do and for a long time, and just was inspired and motivated to finally do it and get that out there. I don't know that I've ever actually fully told the story about I arrived at the choice to be child-free. And for those of you wondering, my husband Kenny and I both have been on board with this since day one. I was pretty upfront about my desire to be child-free, and he was absolutely on board with that. And now he does say, occasionally that if I was someone when he met me that really, really, truly wanted to have a kid, he probably would have gone along with that decision. And I think the moral of that story is that we're just on the same page, and we choose to support each other in the decisions that we make. So there have been a lot of times in my life where he has done just that, and I've done that for him. So I think that right there is a really good sign of a healthy relationship. And so I hope that you have that in all of your relationships too, whether you choose to have kids or not to have kids. And so yeah, that is where I'm going to leave it. If you have questions, comments, concerns, I'd love to hear about them. Please leave a review. I'd love to hear and see that as well. If this is something that's difficult for you to talk about, let's talk about it, because I guarantee you I've been there. So it's not easy, and it's a lot to put yourself out there and your thoughts and your opinions on some controversy. But, it's why not? Why not? So I want to thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening to this on your favorite audio platform, definitely leave a review. I would love to see that. That's how we grow here at the What the Nell podcast. So I will be back next week with another brand new episode of the Ecopreneurs Edge edition with Mikey Bentz. I'm having such a great time on that series, and lots of exciting stuff coming up for Enticing Media. So we are growing. We are here to stay. You can't get rid of us. And if you want to get rid of us, oh well, too bad. So sad. I don't know why you're still listening. So thank you if you are still listening. And as always, I will catch you on the next one.
To learn more about how to tell your story, connect with Nell at enTICEingmedia.com. That's enTICEingmedia.com. Thanks for listening to the What the Nell podcast.